Hello, and welcome to the Census Bureau Mortality Studies Workshop video presentation on the topics of Special Sworn Status and the Research Output Direct Access System. I'm Norm Johnson, Chief of the Mortality Research Group in the U.S. Census Bureau's Center for Economic Studies and the Census Bureau's Principal Investigator for these studies. This video presentation will focus on the special access features as they relate to the two studies of main interest to this workshop, the Mortality Disparities in American Community Study and the Tobacco Longitudinal Mortality Study. Some background, again, to the special sworn status. Mortality studies are based off of Census Bureau surveys, MDAC from the American Community Survey, and TLMS from the Current Population Survey Tobacco Use Supplements. The sampling frame for each of these surveys is derived from the decennial population census. All census information collected within the statute of limitations is guaranteed confidentiality and privacy protection under Title 13 of the USC Code. Direct access to Title 13 data is restricted to users who must adhere to the Census Bureau's interpretation of the Title 13 requirements and conditions for maintaining confidentiality and privacy. These requirements apply to both census employees and to external users. External users must demonstrate that they understand and will adhere to the Census Bureau interpretation of Title 13 confidentiality and privacy conditions by completing the requirements to obtain the Census Bureau Special Sworn Status, also known as SSS. The prerequisites to apply for SSS, with support from one of the study sponsors, a researcher must complete and submit a research proposal to the Census Bureau, and then obtain approval of the research proposal by the Mortality Studies Steering Committee. To apply for SSS is essentially 9 different pieces. I won't read them all, but the first one and the last 2 require participation and action, whereas 2 through 8 are essentially reading documents and agreeing to their content and signing them. So there are really only 3 pieces: getting fingerprints, participating in training of both data stewardship and Title 26, these are online courses, and completing the personal identity training, PIV, and obtaining a certificate for that. Some frequently asked questions. Should I obtain SSS? The need to become SSS depends on the type of data access that is required by the researcher to conduct the research of interest. The following approaches to accessing our data require SSS. They are using the Federal Statistical Data Research Centers, the on-site access at Census Bureau headquarters to our analytical files, and working through the statisticians, Census Bureau statisticians using the RODAS system. Another frequently asked question. In general, what is the advantage of SSS? Obtaining SSS generally allows for access to more refined level of output. Use of an analysis approach which greatly reduces turnaround time on receiving analysis output. And it allows for the ability of census statisticians, to reduce their time spent performing disclosure avoidance techniques on intermediary output. How is output created from Title 13 data released to the public? All output from analysis, tabular counts, estimates of model parameters, and estimates of related measures must go through disclosure avoidance practices. The output must be reviewed by the Data Review Board and assigned a clearance number prior to release. Do I need to obtain SSS? Possibly. For projects requiring complex output or large quantities of output, the time and effort to obtain DRB approval for each iteration of output may consume too many resources from the Census Bureau and from the researcher. Census Bureau may require researchers to work with statisticians using RODAS, working at headquarters, or working through the FSRDCs. How does RODAS work? Researchers access the Census system through a virtual desktop interface called VDI at a private place of work or at a private location at home. Within VDI, researchers connect to a server on which the output from an analysis is shared directly. Output is viewable but cannot be transmitted or downloaded from the site. Only the final output, which is to be shared publicly, will require the going through the process of DRB approval. The advantages to RODAS are RODAS substantially decreases the total time required to obtain final results. Turnaround time on each iteration of intermediary analysis is reduced by statisticians not spending resources applying disclosure avoidance techniques and obtaining DRB approval. Census Bureau statisticians are able to perform greater quantities of analysis for all researchers. Obtaining access to RODAS. After receiving approval on research proposals and obtaining SSS, the researcher will work with the Mortality Research Group to complete the following. It will be required to read and sign a RODAS use acknowledgement form. You will have to schedule and complete online training for access to our Census Bureau workstations virtually. And you will have to install a two-factor authentication token on your smartphone. And once you've completed these, then you will be asked to inform the Mortality Research Group that you have completed the above steps. If you have any further questions, you can send me notification or send your questions to my email address, which is on the title page of this presentation. And thank you for attending this video.